Hi, everyone. Good to see you all. I'm thrilled to welcome you to tonight's webinar hosted by Stash. Stash is an investing app that helps people get started saving and investing so you and millions of our customers can achieve your goals. Who I am, maybe you're asking. I'm Sarah Spagnolo. I'm our head of comms at Stash. It's a pleasure to have all of you here. The webinar was oversubscribed with thousands expressing interest, and I couldn't be more excited to get us started. This webinar is about the Stash 100, which are the 100 must-know money tips for 2024. It's created for all of you from all of us at Stash, and we're so happy that we released it earlier this week. Whether you have questions about investing, budgeting, financial wellness, home buying, retirement planning, debt, credit, and taxes, we also have a bonus section on holidays. We have it all, and we're here to talk about it tonight. As a registered investment advisor, we are here to provide guidance to our customers that's always in their best interests. So I have to share a disclaimer that the info that we're sharing today is purely educational. We are not providing any financial, legal, tax, or investment advice. If you have questions for our panelists tonight, please submit them to me via the Q&A feature. You'll see it at the bottom of your screen. I'll be collecting them and sharing them with the hosts in the last 10 minutes of the chat. We'll try to get to as many as possible, and thank you for participating. And if we can't get to any of them, we will address them in another format at another time. So without further ado, it's my utmost pleasure to introduce our hosts. Ashley Feinstein Gerstley, say hello.
Hello.
She is a CFP, a personal finance expert, and the award-winning author of Financial Adulting and the 30-Day Money Cleanse. She founded the Fiscal Femme, which is a money platform for women that has helped thousands of people feel confident, achieve their financial goals, and de-stress their relationships with money. Before that, she worked as an investment banker and in corporate finance, and she lives in Jersey City, New Jersey with her 2 kids and her toothless dog. Brandon Krieg co-founded Stash in 2015 and now is the head of our business development. After 8 years as CEO, he handed over the reins to our current CEO, Liza Landsman. Prior to Stash, he co-founded an automatic trading and investment firm that was acquired by Macquarie Bank, where he worked before he joined and launched Stash. He lives north of New York City with his wife, 3 kids, and he also has 2 dogs. So thanks again to everyone for being here tonight. I will let Brandon and Ashley take it away.
All right. Well, first of all, this is great. And it's so awesome to see so many people join this webinar tonight. So Ashley, I'm excited to do this with you. This is like super cool and fun.
I'm excited.
So I guess let's get into it. I mean, tell us about the Stash 100. So why were you so excited to partner with us? And then also, like, how can everybody use it?
Such a great question. So the Stash 100 is our top money tips across personal finance areas, and it's all in one place. They're easy to digest and actionable. And how to use it, I think it's great to read through it. And then also you can use it as a reference. So if you have a question about a certain area of money, to just dive into that section whenever you need it. And why I'm excited to partner with Stash on this. I am a longtime fan and our missions are very aligned. So I'm excited to work together.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
Yeah. And then Brandon, giving advice and guidance is what Stash is all about. So, and why you founded it. So can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I spent many years in electronic trading. So on the other side of what we do today. And, you know, I helped start a company and it was acquired by a firm called Knight Capital. And I ended up going to work at Macquarie after the acquisition. And I realized that I personally needed a change. And I met my co-founder there, and Stash was really born by walking around the streets of New York City, asking people about money. And we would just walk up to people and say, hey, do you invest and do you save? And people would say, no, but I really want to. And when we started digging into why, we started hearing the same things over and over again, which was, I need to be rich to start investing. And we also heard, I never learned this stuff at home from my parents or at school from my teachers. And both Ed and myself were feeling that we needed to make a change. And so we did. So we decided to not write about it, not go talk about it, but actually go build an actionable platform which is Stash, so that people, everyday Americans, everybody now had access to start investing, start saving, but most importantly, start learning about money through action. And I think that's the most powerful thing. So I'm super proud of the last 9 years, and it's only just getting going now. So it's really cool. But yeah, so it's nice to be able to, again, partner with you on these Stash 100 and take all these really important tips and well, they're more than tips, right? They're almost like things to live by, and not only be able to help, give them out to all of our customers, but also see people put them in action through the Stash platform.
I didn't agree more.
So it's really cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So maybe we kick off with budgeting, that first section, or not the first section, but a very important section.
Great. Cool. Let me pull it up. Sorry. I have a little delay on my internet right now, which is a little weird. I feel like the internet mouse is running very slowly through the wheel on my end here. Let's see. Okay, cool. I had to close it. I closed a couple of windows, and maybe that'll speed it up a little bit. So of all the money topics, hardworking Americans say that budgeting is the most important one. So I'd like to hear you talk about this section, and what is the best advice that you can give here?
Yes, I agree. Budgeting is so important. It's the key to all of the other areas of our personal finance and helping us reach our goals. I'd say the best place to start is actually putting one together and helping you which helps you understand where your money is going each month. So one way to do that is to take the money that hits your bank account, the actual amount that gets deposited, and then take away your expenses minus your expenses, and that equals what's available for your goals. So my simple favorite budgeting equation.
Yeah, I mean, so I think, having said that, I would love to hear you talk a little bit about how you think about budgeting for big ticket items. Yes. So, and we're getting into the holidays now, and it gets very expensive. So how should everyone think about that?
Yes, the holidays are a biggie. I am a big fan of setting aside money over time, and I call that creating a sinking fund. And this is a great strategy for large irregular expenses like the holidays, like travel, if you have kids who go to camp, car maintenance. But basically, you're setting aside money every paycheck, every month, so that the money is there waiting when you need it or want to spend it.
Yeah, a sinking fund is a really, really important type of budget. So I love that you brought that up. So, I think there's a reality, right, with all of this, is that so many amazing Americans live paycheck to paycheck. So how do people think about that? Like, how do you live paycheck to paycheck, but still put money aside for both saving and investing?
Yes, it's a really important question. And I think it's something we mentioned with investing before this call, that it's okay to start small. I think we sometimes think, oh, if I can't put a big chunk of money into savings, it's not worth it. But even small amounts can add up, and it's building that habit, and you can grow from there. So I'd say pay yourself first. Sometimes employers allow you to deposit a percentage of your paycheck into savings, or you can set up an automatic transfer to a savings account. And it can be as little as $1, $5 to get you started. And then if you're looking to reduce spending, which I know many of us are, I am a fan of trying out the 30-day rule. And so this is, if you want to make an unplanned purchase, set the money aside for 30 days, and then you can revisit it. And what I found personally is that over that 30 days, even if it's 48 hours, that impulse can wane, and it helps me avoid some purchases that weren't worth it to me.
That is, by the way, I have to,
go ahead.
Just on that, I have to add one thing. So that you just hit a nerve with me, because that was when I was much younger. I did all kinds of stupid stuff with money. And I opened up an internet savings account that was so hard to get the money out of. It just took forever and ever. So I kept my extra money there, and I barely had any extra money anyway, but whatever I had, I could put there. And so when I would go to do something dumb with my money, it would take like 5 days to get the money, and I would always change my mind. So I just wanted to add that in. It's really great to talk that.
Yes. Inconvenience can really save us a lot of money. Curious some of the ways you've thought about budgeting through the lens of Stash. How does Stash help here in this area?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Stash that's so awesome. And for me, like when I think about Stash, a couple of big things come up. And the big one is auto invest, auto stash. It is so powerful. I can't explain enough that the power of automation, the power of what you just said about paying yourself first, because at the end of the day, if you treat yourself like a bill, you are the most important thing. And you have the right almost to pay yourself first. So even if you put like $1 away, that's $1 you're putting away. And automation through auto invest is just so powerful. So that's the first one. The second one, and it's something that I personally love and I use on Stash, which is goals. So if you go into the banking section of the app, you could set up goals, and you could set up some of the goals that you mentioned before, like, you know, an emergency fund or a rainy day fund. And a lot of them are in the Stash 100, but you could set up a goal, you could set up a target date, and then you could work and use auto invest to save towards that. And it's just really cool that you could actually set these goals up, and you can be realistic with yourself as far as like how much time you have to hit a goal, and are you on track to do that? And through the power of automation, you're working and putting money away on a regular basis. It's just so powerful. And the last one that really comes to mind is stock back. And so stock back is really around, you know, how do you turn your everyday spend into ownership? How do you walk around and live your life and learn that everything around you is a company that you could potentially own? And, you know, if you go to Starbucks and swipe your card for the latte, you're a Starbucks shareholder. If you buy your gas in mobile, you're a mobile shareholder, and on and on and on. And I think understanding that you could actually own your world and build a portfolio that mirrors the way you live your life is very powerful. And from a rewards perspective, I didn't say that right. From a rewards perspective, stock doesn't expire. Credit card points expire. And I think that's a really important point. And so, you know, for me, those are just three really big points. So it's auto stash, goals, and stock back are the three really topical things in my mind.
Amazing. It's like making it easier to pay yourself first, because we tend to prioritize ourselves last. And something you mentioned with the savings account that made it really hard to spend money. How can people learn to be content with what they have, and, you know, it's not buy things because it's what others are doing or to impress others, or just something that's not as worth it to us?
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, this is a generational thing that keeps going and going. It's keeping up with the Joneses. It's been going on forever and ever now. And, you know, I get asked this question a lot from Stash customers. And I think it really comes down to that feeling that you have when you start to accomplish your personal goals. And I said it before, like, you are the most important thing. And so for you to put away $1 or $2 at a time through, you know, whether it's auto stash or any way you can save, quite frankly, if you can start to feel that freedom that you get from it, it might actually help you start thinking about, maybe I actually don't need to do that thing. So I always tell people, like, you know, some people give advice like, don't have that morning coffee and save the money. I tell people to actually keep drinking the morning coffee, because you want to be really nice and do great at work, and you don't want to like not have your coffee. But there are ways, if you look and you create a budget, as you said before, actually, like with a budget, you can start to highlight times of the year or the month or the days or whatever, where you could actually find a little extra money. And I know it's, you know, people want to put stuff up on Instagram and be, you know, flash a little bit. I get it. But at the same time, when you start hitting those milestones that you've set for yourself, my goodness, that feeling, it's so good. So I would kind of just try to weigh those two things together.
Definitely. I've noticed that that's a huge mindset shift when it starts to feel better to save and invest than it does to spend.
Yeah.
For the people who are feeling like they're in survival mode, which I know is a lot of us, what is your advice as it relates to budgeting? If you're just feeling like you're just getting by, you're trying to survive.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard. And especially now with inflation, things were already hard and things are harder. I think there was a big lesson pretty much everybody learned during COVID, which is that you never know when something's going to come up. Like, you know, all of a sudden the economy stopped and most people lost their jobs. Thank God there was backstop or some version of a backstop to get people some money. Right. I think it's just keep putting one foot in front of the other, keep trying to move forward, and keep trying to just try to do $1. It's like when we started Stash, we were some people were laughing at Eddie and I, like, why would you make your minimum $5, which is now $1? Like, why would you do that? We did it for reasons, because if you give people the ability to even put $1 away at a time, you don't get to $100,000 by putting $100,000. You get there $1 at a time. And so I think just setting a goal for yourself and just trying to be positive, and it will be hard. And, you might, power bills are going up and gas is getting more expensive and food is more expensive. And Ashley said it before, if you could try to pay yourself first, even if it's $1, that's $1 you've saved for yourself.
Yes. So powerful.
Yeah.
So investing.
So I think it's time to, yeah, let's move to investing. Cool.
All right. Getting into it. We start the Stash 100 with investing. Which tip, when you look at them, do you think like this is the one that people should know and remember? Is there one that stands out to you?
Yeah, it's invest now. It's not to wait. There are people say, well, the market's up, the market's down, timing the market. That's none of that matters. It's about getting started and investing small amounts of money, not big amounts of money, because you got to start putting money away. It's really important, right? So, the market is going to do what the market does. As long as you're investing on a regular basis and starting now, over the next, whether it be 1, 5, 10, 20, 30 years, that adds up $1 at a time. So I think it's really around starting now. That's a really important tip that I tell people, which is why we tried to make it as easy as possible to get started with Stash and, to get going and then just get on a journey.
And then let's say you're investing, but it's a time when money's tight, like the holidays. What do you think people should think about and do during that time?
Yeah. I mean, we're going to go back to the budget again, because I think a budget is very, very important. Although this is the investing section, but budgeting will likely come up in everything we talk about, right? Because, you have to have a really good understanding of your money and how your money flows and how it ebbs and flows throughout the year. But I really think it's around just investing regularly. So the reason the minimum is so small in Stash is that, if you could put away $1 at a time, at least you're on that schedule of $1. Now, maybe the holidays are here and money's much tighter. Okay, great. I understand you need to drop down to $1 for right now, but maybe you'll go back to $10 or whatever you can afford. It doesn't matter. As long as you're doing it, I think that's the most important thing. So what Auto Stash or Auto Invest is, it's in the app and it sets up a recurring schedule of moving money from your external bank into your stash. And you could set it up to do it every week or bi-weekly, every 2 weeks or every month. And it's just that discipline of auto saving and auto investing for yourself is really, really powerful. And I don't say this lightly, but your older self will thank your younger self down the road if you just get on a schedule and don't do it. So I know the holidays are here, which is why we made the amount and the minimum very small. So you can go down to $1 just to keep that discipline of continuing it and moving forward with it.
Amazing. And where do goals come in? Why are goals so important when you think about investing?
Yeah, because I think you have to understand your objectives and your time horizons, right? And I think this is tip 12. And tip 12 is really important because I think you have to understand where you're going. Like, what are your goals? So everybody has different types of goals. Like I'm getting a little older, but I still have goals for myself, for my family, for the things that I want to accomplish with money. And I have to write them down. For me, I get to put them in the app so I could see them and I have target dates on them. So I really think it really comes down to investing with something in mind. So are you investing for retirement? That's really important, right? That gives you if you're younger, that gives you a very long time horizon to do it. And so it's easy to figure out, okay, cool. If I put away, 1 or 5 or whatever I can afford to do on a regular basis, I can kind of get an idea of, okay, this is my goal for when I'm, 65, whatever that retirement age is. But you also might have a goal for like something you want to do with your family or friends in a year. You might want to go away on vacation. You might want to go to Disney. Who knows, right? But having goals in mind is a very powerful thing. So I would love to hear from you now. So same question back to you now. Why are goals so important? And especially when you're thinking about investing?
Yes. So I 100% echo what you said about how it, first of all, gives you the motivation, and then it also informs your strategy when deciding what to do with the money. I think a lot of times I get questions around paying off debt or starting investing. Which one should I do first? And what I would recommend is taking inventory. So I think we can do a lot more when we know what's going on, just like with our budget, when we know where our money's going, what we know when we know what we have. So what with debt, I like to take inventory, make a list of your debt, like your credit card, student loans, auto loans, mortgages, and then list out the balance, the interest rate, the payment date, and the monthly payment. And then from there, it's easier to prioritize. Like, what do I want to pay down first? Do I want to make the minimums or put more money towards investing? And it generally comes down to interest rates, like how much you are paying on that debt versus how much you're earning. And I do remind people to remember, and this is in the tips as well, tip 64, to make your debt can work in favor for you too. So if you do have debt with low interest rates that are fixed, you can take advantage of that and pay those monthly, but then use any extra funds towards investing and building wealth.
Yeah, that's great. So I guess, as a follow-up to that, how does a person know they're ready to start investing? And of course, what are the best ways to get started?
Yes. So I think about investing, at least in the market, for money you don't need in the near term. So you want to have something that you mentioned earlier, that emergency fund, as priority number one, and have paid off high interest credit card debt before investing. But I don't ever want that to discourage people. I think just like you buy a class, for example, if you or go to a workshop, you can set aside an amount of money, even a really small amount of money, to invest, because we learn by doing. And so when we are ready and we have those priorities ticked off, we can jump in and feel more confident when we start investing. And I think around how much we invest, something that I've seen, because the world of investing, Stash is making it less intimidating and doing a great job of that, but it still can feel like, oh, this is not something that I know how to do. It's risky. And so I would say one of my favorite tips is tip number 8, to not be afraid to invest and to understand the cost of that investing. So we want to have some cash. We want to have that rainy day fund, but keeping all of our money on the sidelines can have us miss out on tens of thousands, if not millions of dollars over the course of our lifetimes. And it's a lot of money to miss out on.
I agree. And I don't want to echo your point about not being afraid. Tip 8. I've been doing this for over almost 20, actually a little over 25 years now, of when I started working on Wall Street. And, in a lot of ways, it doesn't need to be intimidating if you slow it down and you learn while you're doing it, and you'll get the courage and the knowledge. You'll get the knowledge by doing it and learning. And there's a lot of resources. And honestly, I wish someone gave me the Stash 100 when I was much younger. It would have helped me a lot. So, and on that note, I guess, what would you say to someone who's looking for the right time to enter the stock market and to start investing?
Yes. So I would say, don't try to time the market. Do what we talked about, where we start and we invest regularly. If anyone tells you they know how the market or a specific stock will perform, don't trust that, because no one has a crystal ball. No one knows. So I would say start regularly, and it's okay to start small.
Yeah. I have a more extreme answer for that as well. It's like, and run away from them. Like, just, just change the topic, get back to sports, or I don't know, weather, something. But yeah, I for all my years of doing this, I have never met anybody who's like predicted where the market's going, or nobody knows. And I think that's just really, really, Ashley, just such an important point. I'm happy you said that. So I think it all wraps up to, thinking about financial wellness. And so what are the must-dos? What are the, all the Stash customers, everyone listening tonight, and there are so many people here, which is awesome. What are the must-dos when it comes to financial wellness?
So I'd say my top 2, the first is to just honor the principles of saving and investing, so many that we covered today, that I think we think if we just earn more money, we'll be able to finally save or finally invest. But the sad reality is you can make $1 million a year and still be flat broke if you spend it all. And as you mentioned with inflation, that's easier and easier to do. So we really want to honor and be intentional about our spending and our investing and to pay ourselves first. And then just remember that emergency fund you mentioned during COVID. I found that during that time when we actually faced the possibility of layoffs again, or we had layoffs, you realize you might have wanted to have more in that emergency fund than you thought. So a good rule of thumb is to save between 3 to 6 months of your essential expenses to have saved in that rainy day fund, emergency fund.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I totally, that's right. And I want to add something that I think is really important because we've already said it a bunch of times. A lot of times people will say to me, hey, I know 3 to 6 months is the emergency fund number, but I'll never do that. Like that's such a hulking, huge number.
Yeah.
And so, I think we should just take a second on that because 3 to 6 months of money in a stash goal for emergency fund or some place you keep the money for the goal it's almost liberating in some ways for people to have that. I don't think money fixes problems, but you might sleep just a little easier knowing that if something goes wrong, you have, that emergency fund there. So what do you do? What do you do? How do you approach that?
Yeah. I think like you mentioned with some goals being so big that it's okay to start with, okay, I don't want to have my fully funded rainy day fund, but I want to get to that first few $100s, that first $1,000 and break that goal down and know that there's stages to it. It doesn't have to be all or nothing, just like with any of these big goals like retirement. And just because you're contributing less to that now, let's say I'm contributing $5, that doesn't mean it's going to take me 30 years to get there. I found that over time, people tend to add more and more as they build these habits and notice things and make more positive choices, and it tends to snowball.
Totally. And for any naysayer who ever said something to me about, opening up, helping start Stash and having low balance accounts, there's billions of dollars in Stash right now. And it's our customers' money that's coming in small little increments. And so they're doing it. And I think it's such an important point. So I think maybe we should move this to retirement because they all kind of play into each other. Yes. Retirement's the even bigger goal with just, a longer time horizon to get there, right? So what do you think about people preparing for retirement and, how should they think about it and how do they make sure they get as much money put away as they can?
Yes. So I'd say most of us probably feel like we should be putting more aside for retirement than we are. And it can feel really hard to prioritize something that for many is far into the future or feels almost futile because the goals are so big. And we're balancing that with a lot of other expenses and goals. So but it's so important. Ideally, you'd set aside 15% of your salary if possible. You could also get into more detail and actually calculate it out based on what do you want to earn in retirement, and use a calculator. I know Stash has one that we can share to use to calculate that goal. But if you aren't sure, retirees typically spend 70 to 80% of their pre-retirement income to maintain their similar lifestyle. And then another rule of thumb that is simple and you can do right now is to take what you would like to earn or what you think you'll spend in retirement and multiply that by 25. And just going back to this idea of these goals being really big, it is okay if you start with saving 1% of your salary. And I'm a big fan of I call it the sneaky sneak up. So every couple months, every 6 weeks, just up that percentage by 1% more. And the next thing you know, you're saving a lot more than you were originally.
Yeah. Yeah. And it all goes back to the same fundamental principles, right? Of just small incremental amounts of money. Yep. And, trying to, do it in a way where you're also not stressing yourself out, right? Because you don't want to have, financial stress become physical health issues. Right? And I think unfortunately, for too many people, they go hand in hand, which goes back to the importance of that emergency fund and also, using the tips that you just gave to start to think about the long term, but in small increments.
Yes.
And so when it comes to the long term,
yeah, sorry.
Wait, sorry, Ashley. What'd you say? Sorry about
I
that.
just that our financial well-being is such an important part of our overall well-being, and that our stress, our money stress definitely affects our health and our decisions that we're able to make about our health. So it's so important.
Totally. I totally agree with that. So like on the topic still of retirement, when you think about, how to get there, can you talk for a little bit about the different types of retirement accounts there are and how to think about them?
Yes. So it's important to know the options that you have available to you, and then also the details of those options. So if you have a company that or you work for a company that offers a 401k, you may also, that's great, but then you can also contribute to an IRA. So understanding the pros and cons of each can be really helpful in making your decision. And just some examples with the 401k, you can contribute a lot more than to an IRA. So in 2023, you can contribute 22,500 or 30,000 if you're over 50 to a 401k versus 6,500 or 7,500 if you're over 50 to an IRA. So that's important to know. And then also with a 401k, you're limited to a certain number of investment options that are different based on your plan. And sometimes they're great and other times they're not. So you just want to know that you want to look at those options and know what's available. And then some companies offer Roth 401ks in addition to traditional 401ks, and some don't. So just depending on what's available to you, just knowing what's available and doing some research, and from there, it's easier to make decisions.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, we at Stash have been looking and starting to do some stuff in the employer space to offer Stash through work. And it's been really eye-opening to me to learn about, many companies do have different types of 401ks they offer, but they make the eligibility requirements very hard. And so like, it's not long enough for the tenure. So, if I'm working at a company, I might not stay for a year. So I actually don't even get access to it. And so I'm very excited about what Stash is going to put out with Stash Works to give people a savings vehicle to get payroll deduction. And you mentioned this before, Ashley, about using payroll deduction to save money. So I'm really excited about that. But yeah, retirement, and it can be very confusing, right? I mean, it's just there's a lot of complex names and systems,
Letters,
and
numbers.
yeah, it could be really hard. But I hope that people definitely take a look at the retirement section of the Stash 100, because there's some goodness on there, which is awesome.
And you could be a resource to your colleagues as well when they're figuring it out.
Totally. Yeah. Money talk is definitely not something that comes up a lot. And I think a lot of it has to do with the lack of financial literacy we all have, right? We're not, again, I said this before, but we're really not learning this stuff at school. I think schools are just finally now mandating it, but not in many states, just a few.
I majored in finance and knew nothing about money. So I got through a lot of school without learning much.
Yeah, totally. Totally. That's funny. All right. Are we going to get some Q&A?
Hi, I'm back again on cue, right?
All right.
We've had incredible amount of questions that have come in from everybody here. So thank you so much to those who typed in the Q&A. I'm going to bring us home with some audience questions. So let's start here. I'm 31 years old, and fortunately, I'm now able to save for retirement. I'm starting late. I only have about 5,000 saved so far in my Stash retirement account. What are some ways I can make up for those lost years of compounding interest?
This is you, Ashley.
All right. I would say there can be this feeling, because I know you'll hear start early. The earlier you start, the more your money has time to compound, but it's never too late to start. And saving is always better than not saving. So I'd say as much as you can, max out those contributions or do that sneaky sneak up, increasing that 1%. And also I would say not to let go of the guilt of how long it took for you to get started. For example, that you're saying I'm starting late, there could be so much guilt and shame in starting later than we want, but that's most of us. So know that you're not alone, and do as much as you can, and it will still have plenty of time to grow and compound.
Yeah. I don't know who you are, but I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
I'm proud of you for starting at 31. I mean, it's just amazing. Like you can't do it unless you start. So good on you.
That's a good segue to another question, which is, I keep telling myself the longest journey starts with the first step. So I feel better about the tiny amount I can put towards my goal. Is this a good mindset?
I think so. Yes. I think anytime
Yeah.
we can break things down into smaller, manageable steps, then we actually get started. And what I find is if we just keep waiting and say, oh, and I earn more, or when I can put a big, more meaningful chunk away, I'm going to start. And then we just keep pushing it off. I personally did that. I kept saying, if I get the next raise, I'll finally start saving. And, 3 raises later, nothing felt much different. So I love that mindset.
I agree. It's what you're not doing is you're not playing the game of kick the can. So I'll do it next week. I'll do it next month. I'll do it next year. Time goes by really fast. And so the fact that you're doing it now is awesome. You should be really proud of yourself. And quite frankly, you're ahead of a lot of people who are maybe not doing it. So it just takes $1. If you do that and you do it on a systematic basis, it's amazing how money grows if you keep adding to it. So, I'm just very, I love these questions. It's great. It's so good to hear that.
I love that, Brandon, you talk a lot about losing weight 1 pound at a time. Same idea, right? So that's an analogy you often share as well. Some questions about families. What is a good way to convince people, friends, family, and in all caps, children, exclamation point, to start using a platform such as Stash? How do you think about getting younger generations to participate in saving?
I would say,
Yeah.
go ahead, Brandon.
No, I have a system that I use for my family, and I have 3 young kids, and I find it. I mean, I have a 5-year-old. I can't talk to him yet about money, but my 2 older ones, I bank with Stash. So like I get stock back all the time. So as I get the stock back, I talk to them about it, and I explain to them, hey, like, and they know the sound now my phone makes when I get it. So they say, what did you get? I'm like, I got this because I spent there, or look what happened. And we're now having conversations about ownership. And I'm having ownership conversations with a 9 and a 10-year-old. It's just one little tip that I've used. And it's getting to the point now where they're asking to see my account because they want to see the different stocks that I have bought for them and their custodial account on Stash, but also the stock I'm getting through StockBack. So I just think it's cool to start that discussion. Curious what you have, Ashley.
So mine was actually similar because you're leading by example. So that's exactly what you're doing when you're making it fun and you're talking about it. Something that I recommend families do, partners, even do it by yourself, is to have money parties. So it's time you set aside to look at your finances, see what you spent that much, check in on your goals, set up any automations. And I call it a party because we want to make these conversations fun. And even if the rest of your family is not on board, when you do it, just like Brandon was sharing, and you lead by example, and then they start to say, hey, either, oh, you look a lot less stressed lately, or what's that noise from your phone? So I think that can start to have them come into the conversation more willingly.
Like, I love that, by the way. That's so cool. I would money party. That's such a good idea. I love
I have
that.
a money party playlist that's all songs that pump me up about money. So I play the playlist, have my favorite beverage, and run my numbers.
I like it.
All right, next question. What does it mean when people say to diversify your investments? How do I do that?
So diversifying, I'd say the way I like to describe it is not having all of your eggs in one basket financially. And this can look like investing in multiple companies in different industries, markets, countries. And so that if something specific happens at one company, it's not affecting your entire portfolio negatively. Just a very quick funny story. When I got my first 401k and my first job, I had heard diversifying was good. And so I put my contributions into every single investment option. So I was in like every target date fund, so I had It was way more complicated than it needed to be because I was diversified on diversified, but I always remember that and remember that even though looking back now that I know more, I wouldn't have done it that way. I'm so glad that I still did it because it was better to invest in everything than to not start because I didn't know what I was doing.
All right, moving from diversification to ignoring the headlines of market volatility. How do we ignore the headlines of market crashes, inflation rates, housing markets when we are trying to follow the principles of investing a little bit at a time? And similarly, from another listener, if I noticed a stock decreasing in value, at what point or do I hit the sell button?
Maybe I'll take the first one because I love the question. I mean, if you pay attention to every market headline, you'll make yourself crazy. Like it's just the market's going to go up and down. And it's like, as we're an investment advisor, I can't give investment advice. I could give you one one tip. The market's going to do something. It's going to go up and it's going to go down. It's some days it will stay flat, but it's going to move. And so I think playing the long game and not paying attention to every minute move of the market it's a way of doing something called dollar cost averaging, where you're buying the market all the time. And that's maybe every week or every 2 weeks through auto invest that we talked about before. I mean, the headlines sometimes are bad headlines, but sometimes the headlines are good headlines. So sometimes the market's going to go up and sometimes the market's going to go down. And it's impossible to time it. As Ashley said before, like nobody has a crystal ball. So I think it's best to zoom out, focus on the long term, invest little amounts on a regular basis, but do not put everything in at once. That's the one really important point because no one can time the market, and just let the money work for you over the longer term. And then Ashley take the second one. But I love that question because I get asked it a lot.
Yes, I'm echoing. I feel like it was a relief when I realized you have full permission not to watch all the headlines. There's 24-hour investment news that you have your time back for your job, your family, your fun, by not following the headlines and just staying the course and knowing that if you're in the market, over the last 30, 50 years, you've earned like 8.3 something % on average, adjusting for inflation. So I'm definitely the type of investor that is buying consistently, holding, and not worrying too much about the news. And I do know that it can be, as someone who experienced, 2008, I know that even if you think that that you don't want to sell when the market's down, that it can feel really scary and stressful. And so I actually think it's a positive strategy to not look and not check in on your portfolio every day if you know that's something that will stress you out.
Totally.
All right, here's another one about giving yourself some grace, I think. I had done this technique, paying myself first, but failed 5 times. Is it still time? And is there still time to re-practice this technique in paying myself first? Or is goals a savings as well? How do I know to move forward?
Yeah, I'll kick this off. It's all right, because if you failed 5 times at paying yourself first, that's not really a fail, right? You paid yourself first, but you probably needed the money. And so you had a little money there when you needed it. So I don't actually look at it as a fail. And I think it's not about like failing. It's about doing the best you can, right? And just putting as much as you can away that you can afford and knowing it's there for when you need it, right? Because it's your money. It's no one else's money. So I try not to look at it as a fail. Try to look at it as if you did it and maybe you needed the money. And so when you went back and did it again, that's just kicking it back off. That's not failing. So I just want to add that in.
Also, we are not born knowing about this. And I think that is having a growth mindset about money is really powerful. So knowing that with every mistake, we can learn something new. I think if we believe, oh, I'm just bad with money, I can't get better at it, then we don't really learn from our mistakes. So I would get a little bit curious, like, oh, why did I have to pull from savings? Maybe something emergency came up, or maybe it was the holidays and now I'm going to set up a sinking fund for the holidays. So instead of punishing ourselves for those mistakes, like Brandon mentioned, and feeling like a failure, what can I do differently to test out, to try next time, could be a very powerful strategy. So keep going.
All right. I agree. Two last questions, one very tactical one. Well, both of them are actually. What is the difference between an emergency savings fund to a regular savings account?
An emergency.
Ashley, maybe, yeah, take it away.
So an emergency fund or rainy day fund is money that we set aside in case of an emergency. And I actually am a big proponent of listing out emergencies, because in the moment we can make a lot of things an emergency that we might not actually qualify as emergency. So that's money that we use if we were to lose our job or we have to take time off to take care of someone. And whereas a savings account or a savings fund typically is for a goal. So money that we're saving up to buy a house or to spend on something, or it doesn't actually, maybe it's outside of the rainy day, but it's something for something in the future and we're not sure. So that's how I think about them differently. Some people might use them interchangeably, but if you're using it for in case of an emergency, then I would think of that, and it's in that 3 to 6 month range or less, I would think of it as my rainy day or emergency.
Yeah, totally.
All right, and here is the last one, kind of a layup. Where can we get the list of tips? And if I may, I'll answer that one as well. So it's at www.stash.com/learn/stash100. And we'll be sure to share this recording with the link to all of the tips to everybody who was here tonight and also those who registered and were unable to make it. So it's my job to close us out. Thank you all for everyone who spent the past hour with us and learned from these two incredible money experts. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Brandon. Everyone, you're now headed into the holidays with more knowledge and hopefully more confidence as you look at your finances. As a reminder, the information that we shared tonight is purely educational. We are not providing any financial, legal, tax, or investment advice. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Look out for an invite to the next Stash webinar. Thank you so much.
Awesome. This is great. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye, Ashley. Bye. Later.